He was known as the Duke of Delts, a name that still echoes today among fans of classic bodybuilding. Don Howorth wasn't just another athlete. He became a symbol of an era where aesthetics, discipline, and pure passion shaped real legends. In this video, you're about to dive into the journey of a man who left a permanent mark on the history of the sport with his unique and inspiring presence. So get ready, turn up the volume, lock in the focus, grab your pre-workout and come with us, because this ride isn't just about muscles. It's about the legacy of one of the greatest names in bodybuilding history. Don Howorth was born on November 9, 1935, in Los Angeles, California, a time when bodybuilding was just starting to gain traction, but still misunderstood by most people. The only child of Don and Frances Howorth, he grew up in a modest family, never imagining he'd one day become a legend in the muscle world. His story is proof that the rise of big names often begins quietly, in ordinary places, until something sparks a passion that changes everything. From early on, Don was an active and curious kid. In high school, he found in gymnastics a place to challenge his body and develop discipline. It was a tough sport, demanding strength, coordination, and dedication, traits that would shape his determination for life. But Don realized that if he wanted to really progress, he needed more strength. That's when he first tried weight training. At home, with makeshift equipment and no real structure, he started experimenting. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show him the power of lifting. Just a few years later, in 1954, he leveled up. Don joined the legendary Vic Tanny's gym, one of the first big gym chains in the US. Walking into Vic Tanny's gym was like stepping into a whole new universe. Gone were the improvised weights. Here he had access to modern equipment for the time, structured training methods, and a community of people who shared the same fire. It was an environment built on sweat and progress, and that's exactly what fueled Don to keep pushing. And let's be real, how many of us have felt that same rush when we first walked into a place that suddenly opened our eyes to new possibilities? With every session, Don grew more aware of his potential. The results came fast, and his confidence skyrocketed. This wasn't just about building muscle anymore. It was about shaping a lifestyle. The kid who once stuck to gymnastics now realized he could go much further through weight training. And as fate would have it, the right people were about to cross his path. In 1956, Don met a man who completely changed the way he saw bodybuilding. Steve Reeves, the sport's golden icon and a Hollywood star back then. Reeves embodied the ultimate aesthetic ideal: broad shoulders, narrow waist, perfect proportions. For Don, meeting Reeves was like looking at a mirror of what he dreamed of becoming. That encounter lit the spark. From then on, Don set his goal: to chase the perfect balance of power and aesthetics. A physique that wasn't just strong, but beautifully symmetrical. At Vic Tanny's, Don was handed what we could call his first blueprint for bodybuilding. It was a basic, no-nonsense program, but incredibly effective for its time. The workout included classic moves like pull-downs, behind-the-neck presses, upright rows, bench press, incline curls, squats, deadlifts, and ab work. The structure? 3 sets of 10 reps for each exercise, straight to the point, hitting the whole body. That training style reflected the mindset of the era. Build a solid foundation, no shortcuts, no rush, just consistency. Unlike today's advanced techniques and flashy methods, the secret back then was simplicity. And let's be honest, how often is it the basics, done right, that give us the biggest results? That was exactly Don's experience. He learned that before chasing hacks, you need to master the fundamentals. And the payoff was insane. In just 1 month, his arms grew from 13.5 to 15 inches, his neck went from 14 to 16, and his body weight jumped from 150 to 162 pounds. For someone just starting out, that kind of progress was a massive motivation boost. It was living proof that discipline, steady training, and hard work deliver real results. But it wasn't just his body that was changing, his mindset was evolving too. Every workout proved he could go further, that there was hidden potential waiting to be unlocked. Little by little, bodybuilding became part of his identity. Don wasn't just learning how to lift weights. He was learning how to lift his own confidence and determination. Of course, like in every great journey, obstacles appeared. In 1958, Don faced one of the biggest challenges of his life, a serious injury that left him with 2 herniated discs. For most people, that would have been the end of the road. Imagine being a young guy with so much potential, suddenly forced to stop training, not even knowing if you'd ever get back. It's in moments like these that you separate those who simply like something from those who are truly passionate. Recovery wasn't quick or easy. It took 6 months before he could even walk normally again, and 5 long years before he was fully recovered. During that time, Don learned patience, resilience, and the truth that real progress requires more than just muscle. It demands strength of spirit. How many of us would have quit in the face of such a painful setback? When he finally got back to training, he returned not only with a renewed body, but with a much stronger mindset. He now understood that building a world-class physique wasn't a straight line. It would be full of ups and downs. After overcoming his injury, Don dove even deeper into the bodybuilding world. That's when he joined Pasadena Gym, owned by Gene Mosey. This wasn't just a gym, it was a hub for some of the top athletes of the time. Training there meant more than just lifting weights. It meant learning from other champions, absorbing knowledge through shared experience. In that environment, Don packed on 60 pounds in just 4 years, an impressive gain that proved his absolute dedication. At Pasadena Gym, Don got used to a competitive but inspiring atmosphere. Surrounded by both bodybuilders and powerlifters, he learned the value of finding his own training style while also soaking up lessons from more experienced lifters. That interaction shaped his philosophy. And let's be honest, how many times have you noticed that being around the right people accelerates your own growth? That's exactly what happened with Don. But it was at Vince Gironda's gym that his path gained even more depth. Known as the Iron Guru, Vince was both respected and feared for his strong opinions on training and nutrition. Don not only trained in this legendary place, but also lived there and even managed the gym for a while. Imagine spending every day in one of the most iconic environments in bodybuilding history. Despite his admiration for Vince, Don always stayed true to himself. He used to joke that he did everything Vince told him not to do. But that wasn't disrespect. It was Don's way of figuring out what truly worked for his own body. At the same time, he acknowledged that he learned a ton from Vince, especially about nutrition and, above all, the art of posing. And here's a key detail. Bodybuilding isn't just about building muscle. It's about presenting that muscle in the right way on stage. Around this same period, Don crossed paths with Rio H. Blair, an innovative nutritionist who would leave a lasting mark on his career. Blair introduced him to the world of supplements and high-protein diets, revolutionary concepts for that time. Thanks to Blair, Don grasped the power of strategic nutrition as a crucial part of physical development. After all, spending hours in the gym means nothing if your diet doesn't back it up. These 3 pillars, Pasadena Gym, Vince Gironda's gym, and Rio Blair, became a true school for Don. Each represented a crucial piece: the foundation of strength and discipline at Pasadena, the aesthetics and presentation at Vince's, and the science of nutrition with Blair. Together, they shaped not only his body, but also the mindset of an athlete who would go on to inspire the world. After years of building his physical and mental foundation, Don finally decided to test himself on stage. His first major competition came in 1962 at the Mr. Fiesta, where he didn't just compete. He won, taking home the titles of Best Chest and Best Arms. That debut proved that all the years of effort had been worth it. It was the beginning of Don's transformation from an enthusiast to a recognized athlete in the bodybuilding scene. With newfound confidence, Don kept competing in regional contests. Victories followed at Mr. Los Angeles, Mr. California, and Mr. West Coast, each win expanding his reputation as one of the most impressive physiques on the West Coast. These achievements cemented his name and caught the attention of the bodybuilding community, who began to see him as a serious contender for national titles. Can you imagine the feeling of realizing that something you started as a hobby was now turning into a brilliant career? It didn't take long for him to make the leap to the national stage. In 1963 and 1964, Don competed at the prestigious Mr. America, earning 3rd place in his category in his very first year. For many, that alone would have been a career highlight, but Don wasn't satisfied with just being in the spotlight. He wanted the title. Those early results made it clear he was ready to stand toe-to-toe with the best in the country, and his physique was now ranking among the greats of that golden era. In 1966, Don faced one of the toughest experiences of his career. He stepped back on stage at Mr. America and finished runner-up, losing to Chester Yorton. It was frustrating, no doubt. Losing is never easy, especially when you're that close to the crown. But instead of letting it break him, Don used that setback as fuel. And his comeback couldn't have been more epic. In 1967, Don hit the absolute peak of his career, winning Mr. America in both the tall class and the overall title, beating big names, including the legendary Frank Zane. That victory was historic. It put him firmly on the world bodybuilding map. Don had just claimed the most coveted trophy of the era, proving that his dedication, discipline, and resilience had all paid off. Ironically, it was right at the top that Don made a shocking decision. Right after his win, he announced he was stepping away from competition. To him, bodybuilding had started to feel like a draining path with no real financial future. Fame didn't mean stability, and the sport simply didn't yet offer enough recognition to sustain a long-term career. That bold, even controversial choice showed that Don valued his life and well-being more than chasing the fleeting glory of the stage. So 1967 marked not only the peak of his competitive career, but also the closing of a chapter. Don Howorth left the stage as the absolute champion, carrying not just the title, but also the legacy of a man who knew when to walk away. For fans, his early retirement left a sense of "we wanted more," but it also cemented the aura of a legend who burned bright and chose to leave on his own terms. If there's one body part that immortalized Don in bodybuilding history, it was his shoulders. His nickname, Duke of Delts, wasn't given by accident. His round, incredibly wide delts created a silhouette that dominated any stage. You simply couldn't look at Don without being blown away by his shoulder width. It became his trademark and set him apart even among the top champions of his time. To build that iconic look, Don developed his own methods, focused on exercises that maximized width and density. One of his favorites was the famous behind-the-neck press, heavy, 8 sets of 6 reps, which he considered essential for real shoulder mass. He also relied on supersets like single arm presses paired with incline lateral raises, a combo that blended raw strength with isolation. That kind of training demanded intensity and total focus, exactly what Don thrived on. Another highlight of his routine was the brutal 3-way laterals, a sequence where he'd lift the dumbbells to shoulder level, then overhead, and finally straight from his lap all the way up. No rest in between, for 5 sets of 15 reps. This move hammered all heads of the deltoid and built serious endurance. To finish, Don always paired his delt work with back movements like wide grip chins and rows, reinforcing that legendary width and building the coveted V-taper. Don's training volume was nothing short of legendary. At Pasadena Gym, he would sometimes grind away for 3 to 4 hours a day, piling on sets that most people would call excessive. Later, at Vince's gym, he cut his sessions to around 2 hours, but the intensity stayed insane. Minimal rest between sets, no wasted time. For Don, long breaks were just wasted momentum. Rest only long enough to hit the next set with everything you've got. His leg training also showed his adaptability. Because of his back injury, Don avoided heavy back squats, which could have worsened his condition. Instead, he leaned on exercises like hack squats, leg extensions, and high-rep front squats, still brutal, but safer for his spine. This adjustment proved his intelligence as an athlete. He knew when to go heavy and when to switch strategy to protect his body. More than the exercises themselves, Don's philosophy was crystal clear: train heavy, with consistency and discipline, no shortcuts. He didn't believe in magic formulas or secret tricks. For Don, progress came from hard work, daily commitment, and the drive to push your body past its limits, while always listening to what truly worked for him. At the end of the day, Don's workouts weren't just a list of movements. They were an expression of his personality. Intense, determined, and laser-focused, his training reflected his belief that bodybuilding was more than just aesthetics. It was discipline, resilience, and passion for the process itself. One of the things that makes Don such a fascinating figure is his honesty about steroid use. Unlike many athletes who stay quiet or build myths around the subject, Don was always transparent. He admitted to using small doses of dianabol, around 5 to 10 milligrams a day, and explained how it gave him quick strength gains, faster recovery, and noticeable improvements in his workouts. But he always made one thing clear: He never touched injectables, sticking only to moderate oral doses. It's important to remember that back then, the use of these substances was barely understood. Bodybuilders were learning through trial and error more than science. Don often said his strategy was conservative and controlled, never reckless. He knew the risks were there, but his goal was to get just enough benefit to enhance the results of his hard work, nothing more. Still, the real secret behind his physique wasn't chemistry. His diet was laser-focused: meat, eggs, milk, and cheese, following much of Vince Gironda's nutrition philosophy. Don kept carbs to a minimum and made quality protein the backbone of his growth. He used to say there was no room for junk in his meals. Every bite had a purpose in his development. On top of whole foods, Don used supplements that, for the time, were considered cutting-edge. Things like protein powder, desiccated liver, vitamin C, E, and B-complex, minerals, and even digestive aids. This showed he didn't see nutrition as a side detail, but as an essential part of the process. After all, what good is spending hours in the gym if your diet isn't backing you up? Even with those tools, Don was always clear. His greatest edge didn't come from pills or powders, but from his genetics and discipline. His naturally broad clavicles gave him an impressive frame, but it was his intensity in the gym that sculpted his legendary body. The nickname Duke of Delts can't be explained just by supplements. It was the product of genetics, hard work, and an unmatched work ethic. This balance, genetics, brutal training, and moderate supplementation, allowed Don to keep both his physique and his health for decades, unlike many others who pushed too far and paid the price. As he used to say, the secret isn't in excess, but in using what you've got wisely. That mature mindset is one of the reasons his legacy still inspires people today. Outside the gyms and the spotlight, Don lived a life very different from the image of a bodybuilding icon. In 1960, he got married, and in 1964 his daughter Karen was born, who later gave him grandchildren. Family life was always a priority for him, and he valued the simple joy of being with his loved ones over the glamour of fame. For Don, true victory wasn't only on stage, it was building a solid, peaceful life with the people he cared about. Still, his incredible physique did open some unexpected doors. In 1968, Don appeared on the TV series The Wild Wild West, playing a muscular blacksmith, a role that fit his powerful look perfectly. It was a glimpse into what could have been a Hollywood career. But unlike other bodybuilders who jumped at the chance to turn fame into acting success, Don never felt the pull to chase stardom. Instead, he chose a quieter, more down-to-earth path. He worked as an art restorer, showing an eye for detail and precision, later moved into the clothing industry, and eventually into film editing. His career path proved how versatile he was, willing to learn, reinvent himself, and thrive in completely different fields, never relying solely on bodybuilding to survive. That decision, not to cash in on his fame, was one of the defining traits of his personality. Don could have easily ridden the wave of his Mr. America title or the Duke of Delts, nicknamed to sell products, open gyms, or chase Hollywood like many of his peers. But instead, he chose discretion and humility. His life wasn't about staying in the spotlight. It was about building something solid and real for himself and his family. This reserved lifestyle might seem surprising for someone who, on stage, looked so commanding. But Don proved his identity went far beyond muscles. He didn't need fame to feel fulfilled. His refusal to be trapped in the bodybuilder persona showed maturity and a different vision of what success really means. After all, how many athletes do you know who willingly walk away from the spotlight to live a simple life? Ironically, that very choice helped preserve his image. By not overexposing himself, Don kept his aura as a legend of classic bodybuilding. Always remembered for his legendary shoulders and his 1967 Mr. America victory, he didn't water down his reputation with empty appearances or failed attempts to stay relevant. His greatness stayed intact, almost frozen in time. In the end, Don Howorth proved you can be a champion both on and off the stage without being a slave to fame. After 1968, Don officially stepped away from competition, but he never quit training. For him, bodybuilding wasn't just about winning trophies, it was a lifestyle. Even away from the spotlight, he trained with discipline, though in a quieter way. In the 1980s, After facing some health issues, he ramped up his training again, proving that passion for a well-built physique doesn't fade with age. That comeback was nothing short of impressive. Don rebuilt his shape with the same seriousness he had in his competitive years, adapting his routine to his age, but never sacrificing intensity. He was back in the gym 4 to 5 days a week, showing that longevity in bodybuilding is absolutely possible when you have consistency and the wisdom to train smart. His presence in gyms, even decades after his prime, inspired both veterans and young lifters alike. People were amazed to see how Don still carried broad shoulders and strong posture well into his later years. That dedication was proof that bodybuilding isn't just about short-lived glory. It's about creating habits that carry through a lifetime. But his most unforgettable legacy, without question, was his shoulders. To this day, Don's name comes up whenever people talk about round delts and insane width. He proved that with discipline and focus, genetics can be turned into something truly iconic. The nickname Duke of Delts wasn't just a title of his era, it became a mark that crossed generations. Within bodybuilding history, Don holds a special place in the so-called Golden Era. Alongside names like Larry Scott, Sergio Oliva, and Reg Park, he helped define the standards of aesthetics, proportion, and stage presence that remain the benchmark even today. Every photo of Don, showing off those endless shoulders, is an eternal snapshot of a time when bodybuilding was about harmony before excess. Don Howorth was much more than the famous Duke of Delts. He represented an era when bodybuilding was pure, driven by love for the sport and the pursuit of the ideal physique, not the big paychecks that would only come later. His legendary shoulders became a visual icon, but his story went far beyond physical appearance. Yes, his genetics gave him a huge advantage, but that wasn't the whole story. Don combined that natural gift with relentless training, daily discipline, and an unshakable commitment to consistency. Unlike many others of his time, he didn't hide his moderate steroid use and spoke openly about how it helped him with strength and recovery, but he never used it as an excuse to downplay his hard work. At the same time, his path shows an interesting contrast. Even after winning one of the most coveted titles of his time, Mr. America, he chose to walk away from the spotlight and live a simple life, dedicated to family and ordinary work. That choice proved Don wasn't tied to the image of a champion. He was tied to living authentically, with purpose. His legacy, then, goes far beyond stages and competitions. Don Howorth left the mark of a man who inspired generations of bodybuilders not only with his physique, but with his honesty and the way he approached the sport. He reminds us that true greatness isn't just about winning titles. It's about living by your own values. And that brings us to the end of Don Howorth's story, the eternal Duke of Delts. If you enjoyed this journey through classic bodybuilding, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Also, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we've got fresh content like this every week. And if you'd like to support even more, consider becoming a channel member. You'll help us keep going while unlocking exclusive content and special perks. Now tell me in the comments, which part of Don's story inspired you the most? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't go anywhere. On the end screen, there's another amazing video waiting for you. Click it and keep riding with us through the world of classic bodybuilding.